I could hardly believe my own eyes. There it was, clear as day, right there on Sarah's underwear. An odd texture, a strange smell. It hit me like a ton of bricks, tearing apart the perfect life I thought I had. In that moment, everything I'd built with her, all the dreams, plans, and promises, seemed to shatter into pieces. Just days before, I'd closed a major deal at work, the kind that sets your name in the company records. We were on top, the partners loved me, and I felt that all my hard work had finally paid off. I thought, this is it. Maybe now we can finally focus on us, maybe even start a family. But something had been off with Sarah lately. She'd been distant, her smiles no longer reaching her eyes, and her responses clipped and defensive. Small things piled up, and her behavior sent my mind spinning. Now I knew why. Once I started suspecting, I realized I needed answers, and I needed them fast. After a couple of days agonizing over it, I went to see a lawyer, Mary Ellis. Mary had been a family friend for years, and it felt like a betrayal even needing to ask for help like this, but I knew she'd be straightforward with me. She told me that if I was serious about divorce, I'd need more than my gut feeling. I'd need evidence, real, solid proof. I agreed to hire a private investigator. Those days waiting for answers were a blur. I was all over the place. I could barely concentrate at work. The smallest things set me off. Someone could just say Sarah's name or mention relationships, and I'd feel my heart hammering in my chest. Every time I pictured her, I couldn't shake the image of some other guy by her side, stealing what we'd built. I'd been a trusting fool, and now I could feel my life slipping through my hands, like sand in an hourglass. Finally, the report came in, and it was worse than I'd imagined. The pictures laid it all out, cold and undeniable. Sarah, meeting up with not just one, but several guys. The man she was most involved with, someone named Greg, was the worst of them all, and it made me feel sick. Each image felt like another punch to the gut. Part of me wanted to look away, but the other part, the part that needed closure, wouldn't let me. There it was, a life I never imagined her living, a side of her I never knew. Afterward, I was a wreck. All the anger, betrayal, and confusion churned inside me like a storm. The life we'd built was all a lie. I knew I had to leave. I needed to get as far away from Sarah and that entire situation as I could. So, I packed my bags and went back to my family's home in California. Getting out of the house we shared was one of the hardest things I'd done, but it also felt like the first real step forward. When I returned, Sarah acted like nothing had happened. She even smiled at me, as if everything were normal. She leaned in to kiss me, and I pulled back, telling her that I knew everything. Her eyes went wide with shock, then narrowed, and she started stammering out denials. But there was no way she could lie herself out of this one. I had proof, and she knew it. All those pictures, all those lies, laid bare. That's when I filed for divorce. The process wasn't easy. I'd gone from loving this woman to despising what she'd done to us, but I didn't want to lose myself in that hatred. As painful as it was, I knew the only way out was through. And as if that weren't enough, I decided to go after Greg and the others legally. I filed lawsuits against them for what they'd taken from me. Not just money, but time, trust, and a future I'd never get back. The weeks turned into months as the legal battle dragged on, and I threw myself into rebuilding my life. I started going to therapy, something I'd never considered before. Talking things out with someone who could give me some perspective, someone who wasn't in my world, was like lifting a weight off my shoulders. The therapy helped me work through the trauma and also taught me a lot about myself, about how much I'd lost sight of my own needs in that relationship. Alongside therapy, I decided to get in shape. I took up running, eating healthier, and making small changes that gave me back some sense of control. For a long time, it felt like I was just faking it, like I was putting on a show of being okay. But little by little, I found myself actually starting to feel okay again. I made new friends, reconnected with people I'd lost touch with, and even started dating. As time passed, I came to terms with what Sarah had done. I don't think I'll ever fully forget it, but I've managed to forgive her in a way. Holding on to all that bitterness would only hold me back from the life I wanted to create. I know now that we were just never right for each other. Maybe I'd been too naive, or maybe she had her own issues she couldn't overcome. Today, I feel stronger than ever. I've built a life I'm proud of, surrounded by friends and people who genuinely care about me. I still have moments when I look back and remember the hurt, but now, those memories are just stepping stones on a path I had to take. I'm grateful for the lessons, as hard as they were. They showed me what I truly deserve and made me who I am. And for that, I'll always be thankful. Life after the divorce was, to put it mildly, a roller coaster. Every day was different. One moment, I'd feel fine, like I was finally on the right path, and the next, I'd be dragged back into the bitterness, struggling against memories that felt like fresh wounds. It was hard to believe that Sarah, the woman I'd built a life with, could betray me so profoundly. I felt a blend of anger and sadness that I couldn't quite shake. But despite all that, I was determined to move forward. Work became my escape. I threw myself into my new role with a dedication that surprised even my colleagues. My hours got longer, and the work itself, intense as it was, became a welcome distraction from my personal life. It gave me a sense of accomplishment, something solid to lean on when everything else felt uncertain. My bosses noticed my dedication, and they trusted me with more projects and responsibilities. Meanwhile, the lawsuit against Greg and the others dragged on, an ever-present reminder of everything that had gone wrong. Each hearing was draining, pulling me back into the memories of betrayal. I wanted it to end, to be over so I could move on. Finally, after months of legal back and forth, justice was served. Greg lost his job. His reputation was tarnished. He couldn't just walk away from the mess he'd helped create. But even though I felt a grim satisfaction at the outcome, it was bittersweet. It wasn't the victory I'd imagined. Instead, it felt like a painful chapter that had simply run its course. As time passed, I realized I needed to do more than just work through the motions of moving on. I needed real healing. So, I went back to therapy, feeling a bit like I was starting from scratch. But this time, I was more focused. I wanted to truly process what had happened, not just talk about it. Therapy was challenging, but it was necessary. Each session helped me unpack some of the anger and hurt I had been carrying. Slowly, I learned to forgive myself for the mistakes I'd made and to let go of the bitterness I felt towards Sarah and Greg. Holding on to it was only going to hold me back, and I was determined not to let the past control my future. Eventually, I started to think about dating again. It was a cautious first step, and at first, I was skeptical of putting myself out there. The thought of trusting someone completely was daunting, but I knew that I couldn't let my past ruin my future. After some time, I met someone, a woman named Emma. She was kind, understanding, and warm in ways I hadn't realized I needed. She wasn't anything like Sarah, and in a way, that made it easier for me to open up. Emma was patient and supportive, never pushing me to share more than I wanted to. She understood my hesitations, and she respected them, giving me the space I needed to let my guard down at my own pace. Slowly, with her help, I began to see the world in a new light, one where trust and happiness were possible again. The feeling of peace and joy I felt with Emma was something I hadn't experienced in a long time. After a few years of dating, we fell deeply in love, and I finally felt ready to take the next step. Our wedding was a simple, beautiful celebration, a moment that felt like a true new beginning. Surrounded by friends and family, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude and love. I knew I had been given a second chance, and I was determined to make the most of it. Reflecting on my journey, I realized that life is full of surprises, both good and bad. But the most important lesson I'd learned was that, no matter what, you have to stay strong and keep moving forward. There will be bumps along the way, but I knew now that those challenges could be overcome. I felt thankful for the support of everyone who had stood by me, helping me find the strength to rebuild and the courage to take a chance on happiness again. Forgiveness was a major part of that journey. I'd had to forgive myself for my own mistakes, for the blind spots and the moments where I ignored my instincts. And I'd had to forgive Sarah and Greg for what they'd done. It wasn't easy, and it took time, but it was necessary for my own peace of mind. I realized that forgiveness wasn't about them. It was about freeing myself from the anger that had weighed me down. I also discovered the importance of self-care. I began to prioritize my mental and physical health, starting simple with regular exercise and healthy eating. The small changes, like sleeping well and eating right, helped me feel stronger, more in control. I also began to make time for activities I'd once loved, playing guitar, hiking, even trying out cooking. In the middle of all the chaos, I'd forgotten how much joy these simple things could bring. Now, as I look forward to the future, I feel a sense of hope and excitement. I've learned to embrace the ups and downs, to appreciate the lessons each experience brings. What I went through was painful, but it made me stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. I'm grateful for where I am today and for the incredible people who've supported me along the way. Whatever comes next, I know I'm ready.